the idea here with like training plans, we want to move from like general to specific. So in terms of like volume and intensity, we move from like higher volume and lower intensity, so like less weight for more total work, to higher intensity and lower volume, so more weight for less total work. And then that's also true of like the exercise that we use. So farther away from a competition, you use more supplemental and assistance exercises, so things that are like pretty general. And as you get closer and closer to competition, you can get more and more specific. You're gonna gradually move away from assistance movements and like eventually supplemental movements until you're like doing a lot of competition lifts and not very much of anything else. Does that all kind of like make sense? Yeah, it sounds like a really general basis on like how you're gonna do that. So looking at like how you put that into practice. If you're gonna like, coach yourself, and most people do, like you're a coach, so you want to put a plan into place, and you want to have something that's like not too general and not too specific. So you don't want to overplan, you don't want to underplan. So I like to work backwards. Pick some type of like endpoint. If you got like too long of a goal, it's like, yeah, in like 3 years I want to be real strong. You can't put in like a 3-year plan. That's way too long. So I like 6 to like 12, maybe 16 weeks tops. As far as like powerlifting goes, it's pretty straightforward to like pick an end goal. Usually like a meet's a pretty good place to like finish off a training cycle and see if stuff works. But you don't necessarily have to do that. It can be some type of like mock meet or tester in the gym or something like that. You can even do like a try rep max or something at the end. But like there's some sort of like start point, end point, so you got a time frame to work with. So this is like kind of cheesy. I'm sure you guys have all seen like the idea of like SMART goals, but I do think it's really important. So that like little acronym stands for like specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic, and something with a time frame. But I think this is really important when you're like putting a plan into place. So if your plan is like, I want to get stronger, that's not really specific. If it's like I want to get, if it's something else body composition wise, I want to get leaner, I just want to look better. Again, if you don't have like a specific goal to work towards, it's really hard to know whether or not things are working. Again, I don't really have an endpoint, so like it's hard to be sure what I'm doing is optimal. So in terms of like powerlifting, it's pretty straightforward. Increase numbers. If my numbers go up, then like that's usually what my goal is. So beyond that, like you want to have some way of measuring it. Pretty straightforward if we're talking about numbers. Like we can test it, we lift more, then our numbers went up. Now personally with this, I like to have like a best case, worst case, middle case scenario. So if I got like a meet in like 12 weeks, and I think a lot of people do this, you're like pretty far out, you're like, all right, training's going well, like I'm gonna put like 50 pounds in my squat, this is gonna be great. That may not happen, and like, even if you're having like a couple good weeks of training, that rarely carries over for a whole training cycle. So I like to have like, let's say like everything goes perfect and like stars align, maybe it is 50 pounds. But like, let's say maybe more realistically it's like 10, 15. And then hopefully it ends up somewhere in the middle. And so then when I get to a competition or I get to like a test or whatever, again, I've got my expectations in check. Just so that again, I don't end up like kind of blowing a good training cycle by making silly attempts. That kind of goes on to the next part, which is in terms of like realism. So in that example, like, for almost anybody, unless you're like really new, putting 50 pounds on your lift in like 12 weeks that's not gonna happen most of the time. So having like, being objective and like realistic, like if I can put 10 pounds on a lift in like 10 or 12 weeks, that's a pretty good training cycle. And if you do that, 5 times a year, you got 50 pounds. That's pretty good. So then like, year to year, you'll see like, you think about that in like 5 years, 10 years, that's really good. So having like kind of realistic, smaller goals like that and like over time, progressing up to something really impressive is kind of the best way to do it in terms of this sport. I think it's what most of the best lifters do. Just something to keep in mind. So